In the dim glow of the alien moon, Captain Jake Matthews stood frowned, his mind spinning with disbelief. He had faced countless dangers in his years of space exploration, deadly creatures, hostile planets, even near-death experience, but nothing could have prepared him for the moment he was living now. Before him stood Queen Zy'ra, the majestic ruler of the Dralyn Empire, a species known for their technological prowess, military strength, and unshakable demeanor. Her deep green eyes shimmered with excitement, as her lips curled into what Jake could only assume was a smile. Her tall, imposing figure, framed by the glowing bioluminescent flora of her home planet, made her seem almost otherworldly. Yet, it wasn't her beauty or regal bearing that left Jake speechless, it was her words. "Human," Zy'ra said, her voice resonating through the dense air. "You've made me pregnant." Jake blinked, trying to process her declaration. His first instinct was to laugh, dismiss it as some kind of mistranslation, but the seriousness in her gaze confirmed she wasn't joking. His heart raced. Of all the strange twists the universe had thrown his way, this was beyond comprehension. "Wait, what?" Jake finally managed to stammer. "Pregnant? With my child?" Zy'ra's eyes sparkled, and she stepped closer, her ornate robes flowing behind her like liquid silk. "Yes," she said, the excitement evident in her voice. "Our species are genetically compatible, though the chances of successful conception were believed to be astronomically low. This is a momentous occasion for both our peoples." Jake took a step back, his mind racing. He had come to Dralyn on a diplomatic mission, to broker peace between humanity and the Dralyn Empire after years of tense relations. The negotiations had gone smoothly. In hindsight, Queen Zy'ra had taken a special interest in him from the moment he arrived, her curiosity about humans far more personal than he had anticipated. He remembered their last evening together. After the negotiations, there had been a royal feast in his honor. Drinks were shared, and as the night wore on, Zy'ra had led him into a private chamber, where they had spoken for hours about their respective worlds, their dreams, and the possibility of uniting their species for a better future. And then, well, one thing had led to another. Jake's face flushed as the memories came flooding back. He had never imagined that the night would lead to an interspecies pregnancy. I didn't know this was possible," Jake said, his voice shaking slightly. "I mean, our species are we even biologically compatible?" Zy'ra nodded eagerly. "There have been ancient myths among our people about such a union, but none of us ever believed it could truly happen. The elders once spoke of a time when a child of two worlds would bring about a new era of peace and prosperity." Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. Was she really suggesting that the child was some kind of prophesied figure? This was starting to feel more like a strange dream than reality. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to steady his thoughts. "So, you're saying that this is a good thing?" he asked cautiously. Zy'ra's smile widened. "It's more than good, it's extraordinary. This child will be a symbol of unity, a living embodiment of the future we can build together, human and Dralyn, side by side." Jake tried to process her words. The idea of becoming a father, let alone to a child born of an alien queen, was overwhelming. He hadn't even thought about having children back on Earth, let alone in a galaxy far from home. And now, suddenly, he was thrust into a role that he had never imagined for himself. What happens now?" Jake asked, still grappling with the situation. Zy'ra's expression softened, her excitement tempered with understanding. "I know this is a lot to take in, Jake. I can see the conflict in your eyes. You have your life, your world, and I have mine. But this child connects us. Whether you choose to stay or return to Earth, your place in our history is already sealed." Jake stared at her, trying to find the right words. His entire life had been dedicated to exploration, to understanding the unknown. He had always believed that humanity's future lay in the stars, but he had never expected to become so deeply intertwined with an alien race. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him, but there was also a strange sense of wonder in knowing that he was part of something bigger than himself. "I never expected this," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper, "but I need time to think, to understand what this means." Zy'ra nodded, her regal demeanor never faltering. "Of course. Take all the time you need. I will not force you into anything, Jake, but know this, whatever you choose, you will always be welcome here, and our child will be a bridge between our worlds." Jake swallowed hard, his mind still reeling. The idea of returning to Earth with this kind of news seemed impossible. How would he even begin to explain this to his superiors, or to anyone, for that matter? He could already hear the disbelief in their voices, the incredulous questions they'd ask. Yet, a part of him felt drawn to the possibility. The idea of being a father, of helping shape the future of the species, was daunting but exhilarating. He looked back at her eyes filled with hope and anticipation. "I don't know what the future holds," Jake said, finally finding his voice, "but I'm not the type to run away from a challenge. If this is real, if this is what you say it is, then I'll stand by you." Zy'ra's eyes gleamed with gratitude, and for the first time since their initial encounter, Jake saw a flicker of vulnerability behind her regal exterior. She reached out, gently placing a hand on his arm. "Thank you, Jake," she whispered. "I know this isn't easy, but together, we will make sure our child has a future to be proud of." Jake nodded, his mind still a whirlwind of thoughts, but one thing was clear: his life had just taken a turn he could never have anticipated. He had always imagined humanity's destiny among the stars, but now, that destiny was more personal than he could have ever dreamed. As the night deepened, and the stars glittered above them, Jake realized that the universe was full of surprises, and this was just the beginning of a new chapter for both humanity and the Dralyn Empire. Jake Matthews woke up in his quarters aboard the Terran ship Resolute, the hum of the engines a faint reminder that he was still light years away from home. But no matter how far he was from Earth, his thoughts remained tethered to Queen Zy'ra and the astonishing revelation that had upended his entire world. "I'm going to be a father," Jake thought, the words sounding more surreal each time he repeated them in his head. And not just any father, was going to be the father of a child that represented the union of two vastly different species, a child who might be a bridge between humanity and the Dralyn Empire. The diplomatic mission that had brought him here had been simple in theory: establish peaceful relations, negotiate trade, and ensure humanity's foothold in this part of the galaxy. But now, his mission had taken on a personal dimension he could never have predicted. He sat up, staring at the grey walls of his quarters. Every fibre of his being wanted to jump on the next ship back to Earth, to let someone else handle the impossible situation he was now in. But running wasn't an option, not anymore. His choices affected more than just him. Now there was a child involved, and an entire empire waiting for him to make his next move. His comm panel chimed, breaking the silence. "Captain Matthews, you're needed on the bridge." Jake took a deep breath, steeling himself for the day ahead. "On my way." When Jake arrived on the bridge, he was met with the familiar buzz of activity, officers at their stations monitoring the ship's systems, and his second-in-command, Commander Leona Graves, who greeted him with a sharp nod. "We've received a message from the Dralyn capital," Graves said, her face unreadable as usual. "It's from Queen Zy'ra." Jake's stomach twisted at the mention of her name. Put it through. The central view screen flickered, and soon, Queen Zy'ra's holographic image materialized before them. Even in this ethereal form, she radiated a regal presence that commanded respect. "Captain Matthews," Zy'ra began, her voice soft but firm, "I wanted to follow up on our conversation. I understand you have much to consider, but I must inform you of an urgent matter." Jake's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" Zy'ra's expression grew more serious. "Word of my pregnancy has already begun to spread within the Empire. My advisors are concerned, and there are factions within the Dralyn hierarchy who may not view this development favorably." Jake stiffened. Of course, this wouldn't be as simple as a peaceful announcement. The Dralyn Empire was vast and politically complex. A child that represented both human and Dralyn genetics was bound to be controversial. "I thought the Dralyn were open to alliances," Jake said, trying to mask his unease. "They are, but this is unprecedented," Zy'ra admitted, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Some view this child as a threat to the purity of our species. Others see it as a symbol of hope, but the divide is growing, and I fear that certain factions will take drastic measures to prevent this union from ever coming to fruition." A chill ran down Jake's spine. "You think they would try to harm the child?" Zy'ra's silence was answer enough. Jake's mind raced. This wasn't just about diplomacy anymore. The stakes had shifted dramatically. "What can we do?" "I will do everything in my power to protect our child," Zy'ra said, her voice resolute. but I will need your help, Jake, not just as the father, but as a partner in this alliance. Jake could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. He had come here as a diplomat, a negotiator, but now he was being asked to step into something far greater than he had ever anticipated. I'll do whatever it takes, Jake said, the words leaving his mouth before he had time to fully process them. Zy'ra's expression softened, her gratitude evident. Thank you, Jake, we will face this together. The transmission ended, and the bridge fell into a tense silence. Commander Graves turned to Jake, a brow furrowed. Sir, do you realize what you've just agreed to? Jake sighed, rubbing his temples. Yeah, I do, but I don't think I had much of a choice. Graves studied him for a moment, then nodded. Understood. We'll back you, whatever you decide, but this situation is going to get a lot more complicated. Jake managed a grim smile. You don't say. As the days passed, preparations were made. Queen Zy'ra had secretly dispatched her most trusted advisors and elite guards to ensure the safety of her unborn child, but even that might not be enough. The political tensions within the Dralyn Empire were rising, and the whispers of dissent grew louder with each passing day. Jake spent his time divided between his duties aboard Resolute and preparing himself for the role. He had never expected to play protector of a child that might change the course of history. He met with Zy'ra more frequently, their conversations growing more personal. As they navigated the complex situation they found themselves in, the initial shock of the pregnancy had worn off, replaced by a mutual understanding of the gravity of their situation. One evening, after another long day of discussions and strategy meetings, Jake found himself walking with Zy'ra through the lush, glowing gardens of her palace. The air was thick with the scent of alien flowers, their bioluminescence casting soft light across their path. You've been quiet, Zy'ra observed, her tone gentle. Jake smiled faintly, just trying to wrap my head around all of this. A few weeks ago, I was negotiating trade agreements. Now I'm preparing for fatherhood. It's a lot. Zy'ra stopped, turning to face him. Her eyes searched his, as if she could see the storm of emotions swirling inside him. You don't have to do this alone, Jake. I know this is new territory for both of us, but we're in this together. Jake nodded, his heart swelling with an emotion he couldn't quite name. I know, it's just, everything's moving so fast. Zy'ra stepped closer, her presence comforting. No matter what happens, our child will be born into a world where they will be loved, protected, and celebrated. That's all that matters. Jake looked at her, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, he felt a sense of peace. He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. You're right. We'll face whatever comes next together.